Hello audience, Mr. Z here. I'm sure we all know how World War II began: German expansion, British appeasement, and the declaration of war by France and Britain against Germany for invading Poland. However, today we're proposing, what if Poland joined the Axis powers, and in tandem, if Britain and France stayed out of the war? You might think this incredibly unlikely for numerous reasons. Britain's alliance with Poland, the negative views of the Poles touted by Germany, and Poland's fears of being conquered by either Germany or the USSR. However, Britain's alliance with Poland was fairly recent, only being established in 1939 following Germany's defiance of the Munich Agreement and aggressive expansion, thus leaving a good lot of room for a German-Polish alliance to manifest. As for the anti-Polish and Slavic views of the Reich, these could be heavily downplayed for the sake of strategic advantage, instead focusing on communism as the enemy and not antagonizing Slavs in general, as Poland had demonstrated great capability and potential to combat the Soviets in the Polish-Soviet War. This plays into the third point: the Poles were staunchly anti-communist and had considered an alliance with Germany to smash the USSR in the past. So with all that said, we'll suggest that for the sake of this timeline, in 1934, the German-Polish non-aggression pact bears greater fruit and the two nations kindle a close cooperative relationship in order to reach each other's goals. Poland possibly ceding territory formerly belonging to the German Empire and Prussia in exchange for aid in securing Belarus and Lithuania, along with the liberation of Ukraine, to which Poland would also begin lending support to rebel groups within its borders in hopes of sparking an uprising, with the ultimate goal of creating a force capable of defeating the communists once and for all. This initial period of mutual assistance would lead Poland to eventually join the Anti-Comintern and subsequently the Axis powers after heavily modernizing its military and rebuilding the forces lost during the Polish-Soviet War, while the Soviet Union grows increasingly suspicious of this alliance, leading it to fortify its border while keeping their soldiers on regular patrols should an invasion be launched. Now, you might still argue that there was no way for Germany to maintain this relationship with the Polish state. After all, the German Empire desired the vast resources of Eastern Europe, and unlike the USSR, Poland immediately blocks German expansion eastward. Surely this is a problem for Germany, which could lead them to backstab Poland as they did the USSR in our timeline. However, they would likely be able to do so with much more effectiveness this time around. The solution to this would be the annexation of both Estonia and Latvia by Germany to expand into Russia that way. Yes, there'd be a bit of a disconnect, but it's not like Germany is any stranger to that in the past, so this would be our solution for the time being. Poland gets this land and an independent Ukraine so long as the two remain loyal to Germany and supply them with all the Ukrainian oil and Polish soldiers they could spare, while Germany takes on the USSR, annexing basically all of Russia along with Latvia and Estonia. This would be the German-Polish plan. Things go ahead of schedule, and by 1937, Germany and Poland, along with support from Finland, Hungary, Romania, and a German-influenced Denmark and Sweden, established a joint coalition to invade the USSR, beginning with the Polish occupation of Lithuania and the landing of German troops in Estonia and Latvia. The Polish-Soviet border would be too heavily fortified to breach with a direct assault, and Axis forces would need to be routed through Romania and into Ukraine, as well as through Finland, while the main invasion force pushed through the occupied Baltic states. The Soviets this early on were underdeveloped and crippled from Stalin's purges of military and government officials he saw as threats. This would lead to an initial poor performance by the Soviet military in the first months of war. Unfortunately for them, this would be enough time for the Axis, with unrelenting blitzkrieg tactics and in more optimal conditions than in our timeline, to seize Moscow and force the Soviets out, assuring many German allies that the war had been won then and there, and leading Poland, Ukraine, and Finland to withdraw from direct conflict. However, the war was far from over, and the Soviet army had fled to the Urals to regroup. Germany would press on, determined to wipe out what remained of the communists, but being satisfied with their spoils of war and now needing to ship soldiers miles across the Russian border to combat them, Poland would end official conflicts, though continue to supply Germany with oil from allied Ukraine. However, not accepting this mere consolation prize, Germany would proceed to occupy Polish land, leaving them with less than what they had to begin with, and rattling Polish-German relations severely. Things looked bad for Poland. Its only ally had just trampled across their pact, and was certainly capable of doing worse if the Ukraine didn't peacefully continue its resource flow to the German war machine. Poland was but a middleman, and it'd only be a matter of time until Germany realized it no longer needed it. The Soviets couldn't keep the Germans preoccupied forever, and even if they did, what's stopping Germany from conquering what remained of Poland anyway? Something had to be done in order to secure its existence, as well as that of the states around it. Everyone knew Germany had grown into an unstoppable beast, and had just demonstrated its disregard for alliances already held. What could be done, not to fight against Germany, but just establish a protective measure against it? Well, an old plan drawn up by Poland, Ukraine, and Romania would once again turn up. The Intermarium, a between-seas superstate, and an old design which just so happened to include these states specifically, along with Hungary and Lithuania. However, the latter would need to be substituted for the new autonomous Caucasus state that emerged east of Ukraine. The 5 states will unite their militaries into a unitary force to defend against a German invasion, fortifying their borders with the German Reich, and allocating their resources for optimal efficiency. Now, they certainly wouldn't be able to take Germany head-on, but may just stand a chance of defending themselves should Germany attempt anything, especially as the Reich was preoccupied with its conflicts against the USSR remnants. All the while, the Soviets would have been establishing closer ties with Mongolia and eventually drawing them into this conflict, making things even tougher for Germany. Sooner or later, the German-Soviet war would need to be called to an end, as borders shift only slightly and the German Reich was no longer able to force resources from its proxy states. As the Soviets asserted dominance over Mongolia, so would they become perceived as an increased threat to Japanese Manchuria, and potentially spark a reaction from the Japanese Empire, who would have also initiated war with the US, possibly drawing America into the German-Soviet conflicts as well. This could simply be resolved here with the Germans and Soviets calling a truce, or linger on long enough to become a war involving both the US and Japan, eventually turning into a race for the atomic bomb, which may not even be enough of a solution by this point, as the Germans wouldn't have a specific target to bomb, having Soviet forces scattered all throughout eastern Russia, while the US and Soviets wouldn't even be nearly within range of any major German cities to begin with. So again, I call this a draw, with Japan possibly losing if they linger too long, and the Soviets later going on to engage in direct war with the US over Asia, as communism makes a major comeback within the region, drawing many Asian nations over to the Soviet side, while others flock over to either the US or Japanese Empire for support in this conflict, depending on exactly what timeline we follow. And that is where I'm going to end this scenario for now. Thank you all for watching, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more. Mr. Z, out.